Hello, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. I suggest we wait a couple of minutes for everyone to join in, and then we can actually begin. In the meantime, welcome. This is our webinar, Creating a Humanized Culture Through Employee Advocacy. My name is Camila, and I will be your host from Ambassify. And today I will be interviewing or talking to Simone Bonnett. She's a social media manager and employee advocacy specialist. Maybe I'll give you the floor so you can introduce yourself while we wait for everyone else to join.
Hi, everyone. I'm Simone Bonnett. Thank you for the lovely introduction, Camilla. I'm a social media strategist and an employee advocacy specialist. So I very much evangelize about the power of employee advocacy. And I'm really excited to be on this webinar today. We get to deep dive into firstly, why it's important to have a humanized and a strong culture, and what the benefits are for the business and for the employees themselves. So this is one of those topics I can just talk on and on and on about. So yeah, no, really looking forward to this. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, maybe we wait one more minute or so for in case some more people join in, and then we can actually get started. I will stop sharing my screen so that everyone can see our faces while we actually talk. I think that's nice.
It does help.
All right, then maybe we can get started. It's 11:02. So as everyone knows here today, the topic of the webinar is employee advocacy and how that is a good strategy to create and build your humanized culture within a company. But so maybe to get started, we should talk about why it's so important for companies to have a humanized culture. So Simone, what are your thoughts on this?
You know, it really should be a no-brainer, but really in the depth of it, okay, having a humanized culture means that you are actually viewing your team as humans, not as cogs in your business, essentially. So what does that lead to? That leads to higher employee engagement and productivity. They feel valued. They give you more. It reduces staff turnover. So an employee won't leave a place that they're happy at, you know. You also get to attract more high caliber talent because of the quality of your culture. You're creating a positive work environment that boosts morale and performance, and you're fostering diversity and inclusion as well, because everybody has got a seat at the table. You see, that's the collaboration element of a really good employee advocacy strategy. And then really, at the end of the day, what that does is positively impact the company's bottom line. Now, studies have shown that companies with well thought out employee advocacy strategies are 23% more profitable. So there we go again. It's a no-brainer. Value your people, your business grows more.
Absolutely. I think, you know, whenever employees are involved, whenever you give them a seat at the table, and you allow them and you empower them to collaborate with you, I mean, there's only benefits there, and not just for companies, I mean, also for employees, definitely. You know, before we get into, you know, the later stages and hear why we talk about employee advocacy, I just want to zoom in for a second on hybrid companies, hybrid environments. You know, it's important for everyone, for every company to have such a strong and humanized culture, but I feel like it's even more important for hybrid companies. And this is a reality for many nowadays. I mean, Ambassify itself is a hybrid company. So yeah, what do you think about that?
It makes sense to have a strong internal culture. You're not only dealing with distance, you're dealing with time zones, you know, which can make for a fractured work culture. The thing is about a hybrid or remote work culture is that you've got access to a bigger pool of talent, and that's really important for growing a business. You need to be getting in the best people possible. So I feel very strongly about having a hybrid remote works environment these days. but it does come with challenges. But these can become overcome with a good employee advocacy strategy, because within that strategy, what you're building in is consultation and collaboration, okay? So no matter where your team is or what time zone they are, they have got a seat at the table. They feel like they're positively impacting the business, and they have an opportunity to showcase themselves within this employee advocacy strategy. So I think moving into a hybrid or remote environment might have been quite a leap for a lot of businesses, especially as it happened quite quickly. But what it has really done is brought humanizing culture to the fore, actually, which is one positive impact nobody actually expected. And I think that one of the things that businesses should really pay attention to is that consultation and collaboration aspect, because there's nothing so alienating as telling your team what to do in a way that makes them feel disenfranchised, you know. Bring them along for the journey. It's super important. It really, really is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I 100% agree. You mentioned challenges that hybrid environments carry with them, and that employee advocacy can tackle, can solve. What do you think are these challenges?
It's very easy because humans, by and large, they kind of do their own thing. They form cliques, you know, and within a hybrid and remote culture, you've got that distance element. You know, you can hide behind your screen. You can do your rote tasks every day and not be involved. There's no real micromanagement in that kind of aspect either. And the real challenge is going, okay, we're a team. How do we show up for each other as a team? Having regular consultations, checking in with your team every day via Teams or Zoom or whatever it is. When you've got a campaign on the go, doing an internal campaign is super important. You don't just shove the campaign at your team and say, here, you know, we want you to put this out, put that out, all the rest of it. You say, listen, guys, this is what we want to do. This is why we want to do it. And this is how you can help. This is how you can shine. This is how we showcase who we are as a business. It becomes, and I hesitate to use this word because it's been a trifle overused, family. It's a team. It really has got that feeling of cohesiveness. And make no mistake, back in the days when we were all stuck in offices, there was to some extent an alienation within companies, even in by the water coolers and all those other things people talk about now. And a good manager and a good team stayed in touch. They consulted, they collaborated, they brought everyone along for the journey. And you can tell the difference between a bad and a good culture by the way the team speaks about where they work. You know, it's not a hard lift for them to be ambassadors for a business that they believe in, a culture that they believe in, a team that they believe in and feel a massive part of.
Yeah, no, indeed, that makes a huge difference. And like you said, when you're in the office, it's much easier to get people together. But when your workforce is scattered and everyone is not only working from home, but maybe like even working from different time zones, different countries, then it's even harder to get people together and to create that feeling. But with advocacy, you really can turn things around, really build something even when, you know, the people are so physically far away from each other. But being digitally connected, you know, it helps, but you have to really make it work for yourself, and advocacy is a way to do that, right? So, you know, we talked about earlier, you know, in your first comment, you talked about how, you know, there's so many benefits that advocacy can bring to your company. When, you know, in general, for a company, it can really impact your bottom line, but then there's that culture aspect, right? Which is mainly what we're talking about today. Why is advocacy such a specific, strategy and tool to really achieve this goal?
I think if we take it back to what a good employee advocacy strategy involves, then you begin to see the benefits. Because you're utilizing tools like consultation and collaboration, it means that the team get to feel a part of what they're doing. They get to actually contribute. And contribution is where you start making people feel valuable. The process of employee advocacy also involves training, because within your team, you might find some people who are a bit nervous of, say, LinkedIn or Twitter or whatever platform that you're using to employ this advocacy. So there's training involved. You're upskilling your team, which has got massive benefits. It's a game changer in that you're bringing several different elements to it. And within those elements, the humans are central to the strategy, because without them, it's not going to work. The employees are rewarded for participation, because gamification is also another important aspect of a good employee advocacy strategy. I mean, it doesn't have to be just a simple bottle of champagne because you were the person that shared the most. It could be the opportunity to showcase your skills on the business's platforms. There is a myriad different ways to reward an employee for participation in a way that makes them feel valued. And also, by looking after your people, you're looking after your business. It really is good common sense.
Absolutely, yeah. What, in your experience, I know you've worked with different clients, and you have a lot of experience with setting up, launching advocacy programs in different companies. In your experience or in your book, what does a good strategy entail? You mentioned when you have a strong strategy, what does that entail for you?
It's a process. It's certainly a process. There isn't a case of, well, telling your guys, here's the post, share it out, and that's your employee advocacy. It starts off with, what are you wanting to do with this employee advocacy strategy? It can do a number of things, but you need to understand what it is that you're trying to achieve with it. Are you trying to have a positive impact on your company's bottom line without putting out too much money? Is that what you're trying to achieve? Are you trying to improve culture? Are you trying to do both at the same time? Are you trying to increase brand awareness on a much bigger scale? You actually have to sit down and decide what it is that you want to achieve with this. You need to set your goals and your KPIs. It's got to be measurable. As with everything, if it's not measurable, how do you know it's working? A good business works on data. On good, solid data, you make your business decisions based off of that. You need to get stakeholder buy-in. And stakeholders are up and down. You've got to get everybody's buy-in. They've all got to come along for the journey for it to really work. Like I said, gamification and incentivizing participation, also super important. And what that does, in essence, is it might encourage the more nervous, the more reticent. You've got people who are more introverted and prefer not to be quite so public. It also encourages a brand voice and an individual voice, because what you're not asking for a copy-paste scenario when they're sharing content. What you're asking them is to advocate for the company using their own voices. So it starts to encourage them to think about how they want to represent themselves on public platforms. Training is such a huge element, because not only does it involve finding your way around a platform, but around how best to interact on that platform. When is a good time to be casual in your captions, for example? What hashtags to use? We can provide suggestions, but what you don't want is 40, 100 people all saying the same thing, because then you start interesting the spam filters on your platforms, but it also looks inauthentic. It looks like you are literally telling your team what to do. And it's also the regular monitoring and evaluation. you've got to have kind of a regular check-in to see that it's working, to fine-tune your approach, to see whether or not you need more involvement in certain aspects, or what to take out, or even in cadence, how often are you making your social media about employee advocacy. So there's a number of moving parts in a really good employee advocacy strategy. It isn't a kind of side hustle in essence of any company. It actually traditionally fell under HR, but more and more it's becoming the social media person's job to run the advocacy. And it's a very involved process, because with all that consultation, you're dealing with a lot of people. And as I said, there is a lot of moving parts. So it's super important that you've got a structure to this.
Yeah, no, indeed, like you said, it's not a side hustle. It's your main thing. And I really like what you said about, encouraging authenticity and just showing employee, like training plays a huge part here, right? Like you have to show people, you have to show your employees how they can be themselves on social media, right? And this is also a huge part of what we do at Ambassify. We always, encourage customization. We have a ton of features around that as well. Like you don't want your employees to have that one message and then you have hundreds, dozens or hundreds of people sharing the same message, maybe even at the same time, with the same caption. You want to give them the tools to be able to craft their own message, to craft their own view and really use their voice, right? Because in the end, that's what matters here, the voice, like the authentic voice of your employees. If we know that people don't trust logos, they don't trust companies, but they trust people, then, whenever you see 50 or 100 employees from the same company posting the same message, then that's not authentic anymore. There's a company behind it. And then it's just the same as having a corporate message put out to the company page. It's just that you're putting out the same message to your employees, and that of course defeats the purpose, right? But how do you, in your experience, what has worked in helping employees through this, like helping them be authentic? Because obviously not everyone in the company has the same skills or confidence when it comes to being active on social media. We refer to employees as corporate influencers sometimes, but not everyone can be an influencer, right? So of course, training plays a part in that, but what has worked, for you in teaching this or showing this?
I work off the principle of there is no one size fits all. And I've come across teams who have an absolute horror of using an emoji on LinkedIn, for example, because people got predefined notions. And we've also got to take into account that humans are also inwardly focused. So when you put a post out, you think everybody is going to see that and they're going to judge you. There's that whole element. So there's a massive ball of fear around. And what I find works is talking them through an approach that they feel comfortable, because done is better than nothing at all. So if you manage to get somebody who's previously very nervous about posting anything on social media, and you get them to the stage where they can put something that might be, a bit softer than you would have liked, but at least they've put it out there and they start getting a feel for interacting on the platform, it becomes a collaborative exercise. And I know that I'm in danger of overusing that word, but it's literally sometimes taking people by the hand and introducing them to the world of social media. And for the most part, we're dealing with LinkedIn as an employee advocacy platform, because it's our major B2B platform, but because also they've got a few tools there. So people have this hangover of LinkedIn as being a staid, everybody's wearing suits, everybody's very bland, and where it's not that place anymore. People have the opportunity to be themselves, and they go the full spectrum, much like any other social media platform. You get the full spectrum from the people that are using you know, the F word on there to people that are perhaps a lot more corporate and thought leadershipy. It really is the full gamut, and it's finding that comfortable place for that person so that they can be authentic. But it's guiding them along that process. And that's why, where there is an employee advocacy strategy, you need to have somebody leading that strategy, guiding them through it, monitoring it, collaborating. So that's why I say it's not an afterthought when building a culture. It's not an afterthought in your marketing either. It should be one of the pillars of your strategies going forward. And it's a very rewarding way to do things, I think, because you're building your team, you're getting to know your team as well.
Yeah, absolutely. No, we, to all of our customers, we always encourage them to have like a dedicated person or team that can really work on this, because indeed you can just put out, a campaign every now and then, or just encourage or like send out an email and say, hey, we have this piece of content, share it out. It's about building the whole relationship, the whole connection with your workforce, with your employees. And I love what you said about LinkedIn. It's, people don't realize that often, but it really has changed. And I think it's way better because now, you don't have to be that corporate person wearing a suit to be able to share your thoughts there, but you can really share what you want with your voice. And, people in your network do appreciate that, because that's what people like. Even if I think about myself, when I'm on LinkedIn, when I'm on social media, I like when people are being themselves and they're sharing their thoughts about whatever topic. And I think it really shows passion and commitment when you're talking about your company, right? But then, of course, there needs to be an effort from the company itself to talk to employees about this, to show them. And that can, be even simply giving a training, getting in someone from the outside, someone external to give a training, to talk about this, to familiarize employees with it and guide them, in the beginning more and more, to help them find their voice and just feel more and more confident to share their thoughts. In your definition of a strong or a good advocacy strategy, you also mentioned, monitoring, evaluation, getting the data, setting your KPIs. What really makes where should you start there, first of all? And then what makes the difference when you're doing this, when you're trying to evaluate your progress towards your goal, but also the performance of your program? Like, is that really working? Is this working for me as a company? Is this working for my employees, for my ambassadors?
Well, that's the thing. This is the part where I say, listen, you for me, what has worked best is having an external advocacy platform like Ambassify, because what you've got in there is the ability to monitor your performance. So against KPIs like, say, impressions, your brand awareness metrics, all of that kind of stuff, traffic, everything, because those are the important key indicators. But also you're able to measure employee participation, you see, where you start bringing in the gamification. So if you're not monitoring it, you've got no idea who's really participating other than a cursory view across platform of whomever's sharing. But what you start to see emerge is that those people who participate fully start to expand that themselves, and the impact they bring because of that starts showing up in your metrics. And you can go, okay, all right, this person is a genuine ambassador or a genuine thought leader. How can we more fully utilize them? Where would they like to go with this? Because then what they also become is a key content contributor. Content is the oil that makes the machine go, really. If you don't have anything to say or a way to say it, your business is going to fail, you know. So when they are suitably encouraged and develop into a key content contributor, that's when you start seeing the true success of the program, because out of that comes genuine content, authentic content, because as you know, people are more likely to trust content that comes from the employees than they are from the brand. Why? Because somebody is recommending that business. They're putting themselves on the line to say, listen, I'm proud to be working here. What they're doing is fantastic. The things that they are doing are exciting, world-changing, whatever the superlatives are. And that's why recommendations carry the most trust on these social media platforms. You're publicly putting your voice to this. So those are the kind of things that you are measuring. And what that translates into essentially for us when we as marketers are sitting down and looking at the metrics, okay, we're seeing a massive jump in brand awareness. We're seeing a massive jump in traffic. The traffic itself could be coming from employee posts. So the actual advocacy rather than the brand posts. And while the brand posts have got a place, what's really important, the real drivers of traffic, are those trusted employee posts, okay? And what does traffic translate into? The more engaged the traffic is that you're sending to to your website or to the business, the more likely you're getting leads, which eventually get to conversions. So what we are doing is that we are engaging and qualifying people on platform using a trust-based approach and directly contributing to the business's bottom line. So there is a number of ways, so long as you're plugged in, they've got you an accurate means of measurement, and that you have somebody guiding this whole process the whole time.
Yeah, indeed. No, I think these are all very true things, and indeed that's why having a tool behind you, like an actual advocacy platform, can really facilitate and maximize these efforts when you're trying to measure, evaluate, and get conversions in the end. You mentioned earlier content. Content is the main thing here. That's what it's all about. How do you feel, or what are your thoughts on content co-creation with your employees? Is that something that you see coming in right away when you launch the program? Is that something you work towards? Is that how do you see that?
Ideally, in an ideal world, in a well thought out employee advocacy strategy, you will be co-creating with everybody. But essentially how that boils down in reality is that you, in the beginning of an employee advocacy strategy, identify those proactive ambassadors, those guys that are comfortable enough and happy enough to jump straight in. So those are the ones you sit down with and you go, okay, well, let's create a blog post. Let's feature you on here. How do you think you can distill this out on your platforms? What are the things that you talk about on your platforms that perhaps tie in with this? What involvement do you want? Because it's got to be a voluntary thing as well. So, I mean, somebody may be comfortable in video advocating for their company, and somebody else might go, no, rather my comfort zone is a blog, or my comfort zone is a post. But really, it is about co-creation. And I've always been quite dubious about, the whole, here's a post, put it out, and that's how it goes, and leaving it up to them to kind of personalize the captions. You've got to give them ideas, help them evolve on that. And I think as a brand, you can become quite insular about your stuff. And when you do co-creation of content, you start broadening out that thought leadership. You start broadening out those ideas. Your content goes from kind of surface to really impactful stuff. You're bringing in a far wider point of view. So there are many benefits. And what you're essentially doing is you're adding to your content team, because as you know, a content lead yourself, that building enough content to fuel a business is a massive job. So if one of the benefits of an employee advocacy strategy is having that co-creation and a much wider bank of content, then it's a win-win for everybody, because the employees feel like they're contributing meaningfully, and the business feels like it's getting a broader bank of content. I mean, you know, what's not to love about the whole process?
Yeah, indeed, it's a win-win, whether that co-creation happens inside or outside of the company, for sure. And for employees specifically, they feel like they have a bigger stake in what's being put out. They have bigger interest also in spreading that content, right? Because they were part of it. They're part of the reason why that piece of content exists in the first place. And that's always good to see from an employee point of view, obviously. And thinking about culture, what impact can that have? You know, what is the impact of employee ambassadors, you know, in content creation, but also in general, you know, when you think about culture and humanizing your culture?
Well, when you've got a bunch of people stepping forward and say, listen, you know, we want to be ambassadors, we're happy to be ambassadors, you know, they set an example for the rest of the guys, and they themselves become part of the process of building that culture where people feel comfortable in contributing. Because there's nothing as alienating as a culture in which the employees feel that they can't say something, they can't contribute towards the conversation, that their knowledge for which they were hired to do the job is not being valued, that their input is not being valued. And when you start getting a process that's working really well with your first cohort of your kind of bravely running into the breach guys that start the process off with you, it really does take away the fear for the rest of the guys. And it becomes an open conversation. I know that there are some people who are going to go, well, you know, that's a bit fluffy and woo-woo. It's not woo-woo, you know. You forget that whilst you as a business might produce a product or a service, at the end of the day, what actually drives your business is the people. So if you're not looking after your people, eventually at the end of the day, you're going to run out of people to run that business. So better we get comfortable building this kind of thing into our business language, you know, that it becomes, employee advocacy becomes as fundamental an aspect of your business as the accounting, as the content generation, as the lead generation, you know, as the customer service. When it becomes as fundamental, you know, then you're going to find that you're not going to have culture problems, which, you know, I've seen for a lot of startups are the ones that eventually bring them to their knees. They're not looking after their guys. So instead of viewing this with kind of a, ooh, she's being a bit fluffy about that, I'm not. It's actually, it comes down to dollars and cents in the death of it. At the end of it, it's make or break. You don't look after your people, you're not going to have a business at the end of the day. So I will persevere against people who call me fluffy and whatever, because it really, it's so important. I can't tell you how important this really is.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, it's about retention in the end, right? This can hugely impact acquisition and you know, having a brand that attracts people, that, you know, makes people want to work with you, especially today, I think, when you know, it's such a, you know, determining factor, you know, what kind of culture that company has, from, you know, work-life balance to actually what is it like working in there, working for that employer. That's huge, but that's huge for recruitment, but that's also huge for retention, because I'm thinking about, you know, Gen Z, millennials, these people will leave your company if they hate working for you. If they don't like the culture, if they don't like the work environment, they will look for a better one somewhere else. And like you said, eventually you're not going to have people to run your business. So that is hugely important. And a true advocacy program, a well-structured, like a well-functioning, efficient, effective program, goes way beyond social sharing of content. It's, you know, it needs to be an actual collaborative situation, relationship and connection that you're building with your employees. And we are huge advocates of that. We are huge advocates and fans of, or just like defending and showing companies what risks they can run into if they don't pay attention to that aspect, right? Many businesses don't really take into account or don't realize the damage they can do if they focus too much on just pushing content, pushing this on employees rather than working together with them. I don't know if you've had any experience with this, if it's something that, like, how you feel about this. You know, we talk a lot about social sharing fatigue, alienation. Have you had any experience with this?
I have, unfortunately. When you don't collaborate with your team and you say to them, listen, this is the message we want to put out, and this is how you're going to put it out for us. What you, in essence, putting in your work culture is a dictatorship. Do people flourish in dictatorships? Absolutely not. It's a no-brainer again. And it's so easy to spot. When you start seeing this huge wave of people putting out the same stuff, you start to wonder, okay, what kind of culture is that? There is no room for individuality. There's no room for contribution. It's a rote exercise. There has been no thought put into that advocacy structure. And also there is the micromanagement of the message going out. And you've got to wonder about elements of management within that company. So that always makes me kind of super worried when I see stuff like that. And you brought up a really valid point about your Gen Z and millennials, because they are essentially a lot more choosy about the culture they will work with. And with a remote hybrid environment, they've got the world to choose from. They can actively decide where they're going to work. And you can bet absolutely anything that they will have checked out how the employees are speaking about the company online, what the company culture presents as digitally. They will have done their due diligence. So for me, your kind of copy-paste posts are sometimes a symptom of quite a bad culture within a company. Not always. Sometimes it's also, a misguided, somebody's instituted something, but most of the time it's a very key symptom to diagnose a bad company culture. So yeah, I'm 100% with you on that one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and maybe just to make it a little bit more tangible for the people in the room, when you think about this and you see this problem, how, if you see it in companies that you've been working with, how do you revert it?
You see, now this is where you've got to strip it back and you've got to go, okay, we're going to start from the beginning. We're going to say, okay, well, what do we want to achieve with this? We're going to go back to the whole, we're going to collaborate with the guys, because there might be people within that team that are not totally disenfranchised and they want to become brand ambassadors. They want to contribute meaningfully. This is not a quick process. Reversing a bad culture is never a quick process. Instituting an employee advocacy program is also not a quick process. There's no kind of one size fits all for it either. So there's a different application for each team. But what it really boils down to is sitting down at a table, virtual or otherwise, with your team and going, okay, what do you guys want to say? How do you want to contribute? What do you feel would be meaningful here? How can we help each other? Because that's what it's really about. It's got to benefit both the business and the employee. There is nothing good comes out of a system when only one party benefits from the arrangement. Mm-hmm. And that's also just good common sense. So there is a way to reverse it, as long as you've got a buy-in from top stakeholders, and you've got the ability to collaborate and coordinate with your team, really. But like I said, it's not going to be a quick process.
Mm-hmm. No, indeed. No, absolutely. Like you said, both parties need to benefit here. And maybe it's interesting now to go into this, actually. You know, we've been talking this whole time about how companies can benefit from an employee advocacy program, how that can really be a game changer when you're talking about culture, when you're talking about business, but what's in it for the employees themselves? You know, at first, when you first launch it, you know, there's, you know, commitment, alignment with the company goals, really passion for the company, for the product, for the service that kind of guides them and lets them make that initial step to join, to be an ambassador. But then how do you maintain that engagement, that commitment in the long run? And you know, what are the benefits that actually they get out of it? Because there needs to be some, right, for them to want to keep advocating for the company.
Well, I mean, if we go to the main benefit for an employee, it raises their profile. So it trains them and shows them how they can raise their profile online while advocating for the company. Because in this day and age, nobody stays at a company for all of their life. We change jobs every 2 to 3 years, essentially. That's the way it works. We either do it for titles, for more money, or whatever it is. And the way most of us are getting hired now is by our LinkedIn profiles and how we interact on the platform, how we network on the platform. So by raising your profile, you're increasing your worth as a potential employee, but also as your current employee. The training that goes into it is arming you with skills, help you better interact on that platform, better showcase yourself. And then you've got the whole engagement aspect of the thing. So if you are plugged into your company, you're genuinely advocating for your company, you feel plugged into the culture. There's an enormous sense of satisfaction around feeling plugged into a culture that you spend a large part of your day being immersed in. And you can feel lonely in a crowd, but if you're engaged within your team, considering that you spend anything from 6 to 10 hours with them on a daily basis, there's a real health benefit there as well. It's the sense of community around it as well, the job satisfaction, because yes, we get satisfaction from the salaries that we earn, from the campaigns that we launch, perhaps in a marketing, from the tasks that we achieve and what have you. But genuinely having part of the job of growing the business, having your voice put into the mix, being able to contribute content and what have you, that brings an immeasurable satisfaction, and people want to belong. They want to belong. They want to know that they're doing a good job. So rewarding them for that as well also becomes a benefit for them. I mean, there's 100 other different benefits as well, but this is what it all boils down to: making their work experience and the culture within their work so much more for them. And in turn, that means they're communicating to other potential talent for you as well. So it really is a case of one hand washing the other.
Mm-hmm. And we often get this question from companies that we work with. What is something like, how do you, obviously this main benefit that you just talked about, it's what it all rests upon, right? That is the main driver, I feel, for ambassadors that are truly committed. But when it comes to maintaining engagement internally, making sure people, if you have an advocacy platform like Ambassify, maintaining engagement, making sure that people are active, do you feel, how big of a role do you feel like gamification can have here?
Well, if you've got a leaderboard, for example, where your team is competing against another team, so it's like sales against marketing, because I mean, there's huge rivalry in any business between sales and marketing. If those teams are competing against each other, you are going to bet anything that they are going to do the hardest they can to come out on top. And it doesn't matter what the size of the reward is. It's that gamification, adding competition in, and it's not in a bad way. It's in a good, community competitive way. And then you get the individual gamification, because, you know, becoming employee of the month, there's a reason that's something that has significantly increased people's you know, how they felt about working when they get rewarded for the effort they put in. So yeah, I'm a massive fan of gamification, and being in marketing myself, I would love to leave sales in my dust when it came to advocacy, you know.
Mhm.
Because
Yeah.
obviously marketing is superior, and these are my own words. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And yeah, we are also massive fans of gamification, and we have tons of features that serve this purpose, you know, and we see it working firsthand. I also think that this is one of the advantages of installing a formalized advocacy program, right? With a platform, with a software behind it that can make all of this automatic for you, right? From gamification, of course, but also when it comes to measuring, like we mentioned earlier. And what do you think? What are your, in your opinion, the advantages of having a tool behind it instead of having, you know, spreadsheets or just managing it all manually?
Oh, wow. Well, speaking from personal experience of having to have had to measure employee advocacy on a spreadsheet before, let me tell you, the biggest barrier to widespread adoption of an employee advocacy program is the measurement of ROI. So if you aren't accurately measuring attribution, if you can't tie that advocacy down to your bottom line, then what is it worth? You see, so having that platform that accurately measures it, has got all the APIs for the platforms that you use for the advocacy, is super important, because also out of that comes the reporting. Reporting accurately is also one of the biggest indicators of how successful your advocacy program is going to be, because also you've got to justify spend on anything everywhere. So being able to measure that ROI is super important. The other big aspect is ease of adoption. You know, if it's super hard for people to do, they've got to jump out of something, jump into another thing, copy and paste off a spreadsheet or of a Google Sheet, then head over to the company section of the LinkedIn to go and copy and paste what they need to, or get the recommendation. You're going to have people dropping off like flies. But if it's being delivered to an app or to a desktop app or whatever it is, and it tells you, you know, it sends it to you, it puts it in your hand, you are going to have so much better adoption of that program. So for me, having an advocacy platform is one of the most important aspects of a really good employee advocacy program.
Yeah. No, indeed, that also, you know, we were talking about how to stimulate engagement, making sure that people are active. If it's easy, if it's not cumbersome to do, if it takes 10, 15 minutes out of your day instead of, like you said, switching from one page to another tab, to this, to that, then it's, you know, it's much easier to integrate in the daily, you know, routine and the daily tasks, in the daily things you go through, right, in your working hours. And I think that's also, you know, a secret there to making sure that it becomes part of your daily routine, of your daily practice as an employee, and making sure that everything you're doing as a company helps employees see this task as, you know, just another daily thing that you're going to be doing that is going to take you 5 to 10 minutes most, and has a huge impact for you and for your company.
Well, the thing is, you're looking at ability as well. That also comes in, because certain people don't have the same ability or spend as much time on social media, say, for example, you know. So if it becomes easy to do, if it's a click of a button or two, much the same as checking in on Teams or Slack, you know, or answering an email, it becomes that easy. No barrier to adoption. And really, it's just, it becomes inclusive. And that's what it boils down to. is making the whole strategy inclusive so that you've got a widespread adoption, and being able to measure that impact, and then truly deliver something that is successful, but it's not just a one-off, it becomes ingrained in the way you operate.
Exactly.
And I don't think this, I think that within the next year or two, we've seen the kind of dawn of employee advocacy properly in 2023. I think by 2025, it's going to become one of those pillars of setting up your culture, of building your business. It's just going to become part of your business, which is why it's super important that people get their heads around it now and understand why they're doing it. And they get the people in place to do it, because everybody within an organization has got a different thing to do. And you've got to put the people in there to do these things that understand why they're doing it and they know how to do it. And that's also super important as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a way to stay relevant. Like you said, by 2025, it's going to be the main thing for companies to stay relevant. I think this is a great note to close on. I'm looking at the time. Thank you so much. Let me just say this, for sitting down with me, for talking to me about this. If there's any questions from the people in the room, feel free to drop them in the Q&A. I think Simone will be happy to reply. Thank you so much, Simone, in the meantime, for, sharing your experience, sharing your thoughts. I think, I'm a huge fan of your vision of employee advocacy and this, advocating for a more humanized version of advocacy, going beyond social sharing and really building a connection, a relationship with your employees, just making them the center of this strategy. And in the end, it's going, like we said at the beginning, involving employees and giving them a seat at the table. It's going to only bring benefits to your company. So that is huge. I see a question in the Q&A. How do you deal with the aspect that people would like to post even natively and not only via the platform? Thank you. Sylvie from Swiss Life asks this.
That makes me very happy, actually. When I start seeing employees go off and do their own thing and communicate about the company that they work for in a way that's not just on LinkedIn, say, for example, they're talking about it on Instagram, they're going dark social, that makes me very happy, because what that tells me is that they are happy to work there, happy about the company, and that they feel confident in the message that they're putting out. Now, obviously, this comes with a caveat, okay? This happening at the end or in the midst of an employee advocacy strategy where you've collaborated and coordinated with them, okay? That means that they are communicating it accurately. And there are situations where they might go off-piste and communicate in a way that's perhaps not advantageous, and I'm not talking about Glassdoor reviews and what have you. I'm talking perhaps about miscommunicating an idea or a central theme or perhaps a value of the company. And that's where you go back to consultation. You say, okay, well, this is how we do what you can't do. And this is where we start talking about a dictator. You can't say to them they can't do it. What you're trying to do is encourage them to do that. And I would kind of re-establish a conversation with them if you feel that it might negatively impact the company.
Thank you. So Anthony, we have another question in the Q&A. Anthony asks, how do you suggest employee advocacy is proposed to developing economy businesses who tend to have what they perceive as more pressing matters?
What I always say is that done is better than nothing at all. So if you have got a limited budget, and you're putting out fires all over the place because you've recently established your business, I would say what you need to start doing, because consultation and collaboration with your team doesn't cost money. It costs time though, but it doesn't cost money. Those are the kinds of things you can start putting into play that would, first of all, benefit your company culture right from the start. It means that they are then already contributing to content, which means that's another cost you're not having to look at as well. Setting in place the kind of principles around a well thought out employee advocacy strategy, what's the benefit for the team, where you can, providing training, using the ambassadors within your team to perhaps help the rest of the team when you don't have the money to spend on perhaps an external provider. Those are all the kind of little things that you can start getting done. I think what this means, though, is that any business, at whatever stage they are, should start addressing some of these principles. And one of the most important principles is collaboration and consultation with your team.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you, Simone. I think unless there are any new questions, we can maybe close our session here. I want to thank you again, Simone, for sitting down with us for this conversation and for sharing your thoughts on employee advocacy.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been really great working with the team at Ambassify.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining, and we will see you at our next events or webinar. Thank you.